and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment, and the Reverend Joel Halls of Angelica Lutheran Church will give our invocation tonight.
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for blessing this community. We ask you to be with us in this meeting as the members of the council seek your wisdom in their work as our leaders. We ask you to bless those who are employees of this community, that they continue to do their part in keeping this community the beautiful place that it is. Help us as citizens to do our part to reach the goals of the mission of keeping Allen Park an exemplary place to live. And bless Joyce Parker as she continues to help us in this reaching these goals. Be with us in this meeting as we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. Would the clerk take the roll, please?
Councilwoman Gavarrecki.
Present.
Councilman Templin.
Present.
Councilman Cisco.
Present.
Councilman Hayes.
Here.
Councilman DeGiulio.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Keenan.
Present.
Treasurer Armstrong.
Present.
And Mayor Mategas.
Present.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. May I have a motion for corrections and approval of the agenda for February 25th, please? Motion. Motion by Mr. Cisco, supported by Mr. Templin. Any discussion, questions?
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I know that I had communicated with both Ms. Parker and Ms. Folks about seeing an item on the agenda about a more detailed discussion of the recent events at the community center. And I know Mrs. Parker responded, yes, okay, will do, but I don't see it on the agenda. So I just wonder if that's something oversight or if we'll be discussing that in some depth tonight.
Ms. Parker, do you wish to comment?
I believe the request, at least from the information I received, stated that it may come up during the council comments. So I just assumed that if there were questions, we would try to respond to those questions. It's certainly up to the council in terms of whether you want to add it to the agenda or not.
Well, I just didn't know whether you were prepared to
I think my
discuss anything further than the town hall meeting.
I don't believe I have more information to share beyond what has taken place. I could certainly provide an update on what's happened since February the 18th.
Well, maybe then we'll put as an item after the mayor's community announcements and communications, we will add you for just the emergency manager's update on the community center.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll have that addition to our agenda. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. Thank you. Ask for approval of the minutes for the regular meeting of February 11th.
so moved.
Mr. Hayes has moved. Do I have a second? Mr. DeGiulio has seconded. Is there any discussion? I hear none. I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. That's carried. Before we go to citizens' comments, I've been asked by council to be more explicit about the Allen Park rules of decorum for public meetings. I'm going to go through them as quickly as I can. We do have them posted by the doors as you come in, but the ones that apply to, particularly to individuals coming to speak before the council. Individual may only speak on an issue after the individual has been recognized by the chairperson. Comments from the floor shall be made at the podium, at the front of the council table, or at such other area as designated by the chairperson. Prior to an individual speaking from the floor, the individual shall identify themselves and state their address for the record. The individual shall also identify if they are representing a group or organization. All comments shall be directed only to chairpersons. Speakers are not to address other members of the council or members of the audience. Each member of the public may speak for up to 3 minutes. A delegation of or group will allow to speak up to 10 minutes. Unused time would be forfeited. All written statements should be given to the city clerk prior to the meeting so that copies may be made available to members of the public body. No individual shall be allowed to make any defamatory attack or invasion of another individual's personal life. There shall be no questions, comments, discussion, or attacks regarding anybody's personal life. The chairperson shall immediately rule out of order any person who begins to bring up such issues. If the chairperson does not, any member of the council may so bring a point of order. If a person making, I'll skip that one. For purposes of these rules, as they relate to elected officials or city officials, the term personal life shall refer to anything other than that which is said or done in the person's official capacity as an elected official or in the person's official city capacity. Members of the public body may question the speakers, but the members of the public body are not obligated to answer any questions or make any statements on the issue raised or discussed by the speaker. Issues may be referred to the appropriate body, department, or individual for investigation and review. No person or group shall be allowed to disrupt the meetings or proceedings. Any individual who fails to comply with such rules after having been first warned by the chairperson to cease such action shall be ordered by the chairperson to leave and or be ejected from the meeting. And the last item, which because we're also governed by Robert's rules, there's one, and there's been some confusion. If you are to come up at the second time when questions and comments are allowed and 4 minutes are allowed to speak, if you ask a question and somebody agrees that they would answer that question, the 4 minutes continues to run. That time is used by the speaker who's answering the question, and if your time is used up, that will complete the time that you have to address this body. So hopefully that will clear up some misunderstandings we've had from time to time. With that, I'm going to go to citizens' comments on agenda items, and it is a limit of 3 minutes.
Matt Tracer, resident. I didn't hear you quote Rule 8B.
Make your comment.
Are you gonna? Well, you cherry-picked a few of the rules. I believe I was arrested and thrown in jail because of your alleged violation that I did of Rule 8A. Now, Rule 8B says, if anybody makes reference to what somebody else says, they are allowed immediate rebuttal. I'd say that's a pretty big rule to skip. Now, at the end of the meeting, you referenced what I said during my 4 minutes, and then refused to allow me my right to rebuttal under 8B. Let me ask you this. Do you have any regard for enforcing these rules with an even hand? I got arrested for calling you a liar, and then council does the same thing a few months later and doesn't even get ruled out of order. Now, are you going to recognize Rule 8B?
You know what period of time you're under? Wait a minute. You know what period of time you're under? Comment and sit down, please.
So you're not going to answer why you won't enforce Rule 8B?
Come back at the 4 minute period.
And then you'll answer?
We'll see.
Hey, Ray Magusson, citizen of Allen Park, Quant Street. Good evening, City Council and Mayor. I know it's only comments, but it's over the agenda. Are we being taped right now?
Yes, we are. I'm sorry. I should have announced that.
Well, thank you very much. The presentations here from the Senior Alliance and the City Assessor, are those going to be presentations of what they are doing right now and what has happened in the past? And if they are, will they stay around for citizens' comments at the end? I know I know you don't have to answer now, but I would appreciate it if they will stick around so we, the citizens, can ask them questions. Thank you very much for allowing me to come up here.
See no other citizens coming forward at this time, and we'll go, excuse me.
Hello, City. My name is Steve Atanosovsky, Atanasovski. For some people, can't spell it or pronounce my Macedonian last name. I've been here 40 years. Honorable Mayor and Council, I would like to thank our police and fire for the work that was done on this house on Oceana Street that caught on fire. Did firefighters find 12 4-foot or bigger plants, and then police department get a warrant and go back, and how are the dogs that were injured? And what's going on now? I hope this comes to a quick conclusion and that we weed out these kinds of problems.
Dr. Robert Armstead, Willow Cove Boulevard, Allen Park resident. I wasn't quite sure with the rules of decorum. Were they just added to the agenda tonight? When did you vote on these rules of decorum? Because they sound pretty restrictive, but I'd like that answered later on. In regards to the community center, Ms. Parker, you're going to be addressing that a little later?
Yes.
Okay. I'd really like to find out about the revenues. I'm coming up with city documents showing over $800,000 in revenues, and showing a lot of paper expenses, and I'd like those really explained. Thank you.
Good evening, Brian Deboat, Allen Park, Pleasant Street. When they go through the recreation, when you start talking about it, it would be nice to know what oversight has been performed over the last 16 months or whatever, where it broke down at. Anything you can do with how we were supposed to see what was going on there, because there's been many times that there's been presentations here and there's been council people that have spoken in high regards of Temple. And I'd like to know what was put in place to make sure that nothing wrong would happen and why it failed. Thank you.
Any other citizens? Seeing none, we'll move to the presentations. Senior Alliance, Bob Brown cannot be with us tonight, but from the Senior Alliance, one of the staff members, Angie Winton, I think, is going to make that presentation. Ms. Winton?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. My name is Angie Winton, W-I-N-T-O-N, from the Senior Alliance. I address is 3850 2nd Street, Wayne, Michigan. Just a general presentation tonight on what our agency does for the community here in Allen Park, and a little background about the agency for those of you who don't know. We were founded in 1980 by Edward McNamara in the 34 communities of western and southern Wayne County, which is our service area. We are one of 16 AAA's area agencies on aging in Michigan, one of 660 in the United States. We're funded by both federal and state funding from the Older Americans Act, best known for Meals on Wheels, which I think is probably our one program that everybody's heard of. Our mission at the Senior Alliance is to empower people with needs to live with dignity in the community they choose by providing available services. Some of those services we provide: Meals on Wheels, again, of course, the Medicaid waiver program, evidence-based disease prevention, caregiver support. One of our new programs we just added recently, and I think it was July of last year, which you do have one of the handouts in your packet, is the transportation program. We have a wheelchair-equipped minivan. We have 2 part-time drivers on staff right now. When our community resources fall through for transportation or it's a last minute, we're able to provide that transportation for individuals. We have information services, so anyone in the community, if they're taking care of an aging parent, an aging neighbor, the individual themselves can call into our resource line to find community resources that can help them. Our Medicaid Medicare Assistance Program, it's a completely volunteer-based counseling program to assist people with enrolling in Medicare and Medicaid. Care Transitions is a hospital-based program to try to avoid readmission. The one other reason we're here tonight is we are required to report to our fiduciary bodies, which because we're governed by the Downriver Community Council and the Council of Western Wayne, you are one of our fiduciary bodies. Our expenses, our admin rate is 7%, which is extremely low for a nonprofit agency, which means 93% of our funds goes back into services. We have a $15 million annual budget, 10% fund balance. All of our audits are unqualified, no findings, no recommendations, no management letters for the past 5 years. The number, for those that, again, maybe don't know or the residents, each community provides us with a match amount. Allen Parks for this year was $2,350. In return for that match amount, we provide over $274,000 in services to your residents in Allen Park. We delivered 17,328 home-delivered meals in 2013 and 3,678 congregate meals. So your match amount helps us, again, turn around and provide those services to your residents. We do have outreach. We have individuals available for outreach if you have any community events that you would like us to come out. There is a business card in there with our contact number, as well as the Best of Aging magazine that goes out to residents as well. We're on Facebook and Twitter. So if anybody's following on those, they can find out about our community events. If there is any questions, I'd be more than happy. I can stick around for a little while if the meeting ends quick enough for me. I would be more than happy to stay around for either council members, the mayor, or any residents to ask any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We go to Mr. Gary Ivanko, the city assessor.
Good evening. My name is Gary Ivanko, and I am your assessor for the city of Allen Park. I thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Ms. Parker, Madam Treasurer, esteemed clerk. I'm here to report that I'm nearly completed with the 2014 assessment roll for the city of Allen Park. And in general, the values of all property are on the increase. In general terms, residential properties this year have increased by approximately 5% on a citywide average basis. Commercial properties have increased on average by 3% on a citywide basis, and industrial properties have increased by approximately 3.5%. The increase in industrial properties is realized predominantly in the Fairlane Business Park area. There's been some recent sales of property in there that indicate that an increase in assessment is warranted. I have prepared a map of the city, which I will distribute with your permission, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
That shows the individual neighborhood adjustments As you will see on the map that's being distributed, the assessment increases throughout the city of Allen Park range from approximately 1% in the Daniel Court area towards the south end of town to a high of 8.1%. And the various neighborhoods throughout the city are increasing in varying percentages. Now, it should be recognized that the assessments are required to represent 50% of a property's market value. However, since the passage of Proposal A, the assessed value no longer serves as the basis for property tax, but instead we now have taxable value. And the taxable value, in its simplest definition, is last year's taxable value plus an adjustment for the rate of inflation. This year, the inflation rate that assessors are to be used throughout the state of Michigan is 1.6%. So in those neighborhoods that have assessment increases, or any individual home that has an assessment increase that would be in excess of 1.6%, their taxable value would be limited to an increase of 1.6%. The exception to the rule would be if something has been added to the property, such as an addition, or if the property was previously exempt and now is going to be added to the assessment roll, or if the property sold during the previous year. If a property sold during 2013, the 2014 assessment will serve as the taxable value beginning in 2014, and then that value would then be adjusted for the rate of inflation until it is sold again, or until such time as something is added or taken away from that piece of property. Because of the fact that the inflation rate is at 1.6%, and I have not yet finalized the total taxable value for the city of Allen Park, but it is reasonable to anticipate that in spite of the fact that we have assessments increasing in commercial industrial in the 3% range, or 5% in the residential area, it's reasonable to anticipate a taxable value increase citywide in the range of 1%. So to that end, I stand here ready to answer any questions that the mayor or the council or the citizens of Allen Park may have.
Councilman DiGiulio.
I'm just curious why Park in the Woods there is only a 0.9%, and why Paris Court condos are 5.9%.
The increases are based on recent sales of property. More specifically, for this assessment roll, sales of property that occurred beginning in October of 2011 through September of 2013 were utilized. And I, as the assessor, can only follow the data. To the extent that the data indicates a 10% increase, then I'm obligated to recognize a 10% increase. Conversely, if the data, as we had last year, indicates that a decrease is warranted, then the decrease has to be applied as dictated by the selling prices of property.
So we're going by there were more houses sold in Paris Court than there were in Park in the Woods?
In terms of volume of sales, I can't say that.
Park in the Woods, I think, is a smaller area of homes.
Right. You would expect that a smaller area to have a smaller number of sales.
Right.
But I did not bring that data to specifically answer your question, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Did these, excuse me, and I noticed they seem to be blocked out, and these are presumably subdivisions or something, and you evaluate them by these districts or these little areas. Is that the idea?
Yes. Well, to be perfectly frank, I'm utilizing the neighborhood areas that were previously delineated by your former assessor, Ms. Grivens, and I have not altered the boundaries of those neighborhoods, but instead have continued to utilize those same neighborhood areas as have been used in the past.
Okay.
Now, the assessment change notices will be mailed out. People should be receiving those assessment change notices early next week, is my anticipation. And everybody in the city of Allen Park will receive an assessment change notice, whether or not their assessment actually changed. Even if the assessment remained the same, they will receive a notice, and they will be advised as to what the 2014 assessed value and the taxable value of their property is proposed to be. The assessment roll at this juncture is a work in progress. My responsibility is to prepare that roll and to deliver that roll to the Board of Review on the Tuesday following the first Monday in March. And so to that end, I will be meeting with the Board of Review for the City of Allen Park next week, Tuesday, and to present to them the assessment roll. Once I do that, the assessment roll becomes the complete jurisdiction of that Board of Review, and they are the only body that can make changes from that point forward. When the Board of Review will be in session for 4 days, they're scheduled right now, beginning Monday the 10th, and they'll be in session Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I apologize that I did not bring the times, but on the assessment notice, the precise times will be identified on each individual notice. Persons that appear before the Board of Review will be heard by the board. The board will make an independent determination of what the assessment should be. When the board completes their review process, they will sign a certificate that identifies the total value of the city of Allen Park to be used for property tax purposes. That certified roll then serves as the basis for the property tax levy in July and again in December. Changes thereafter can only occur by means of orders from the Michigan Tax Tribunal or the State Tax Commission. If there's any questions, if not, I thank you for the opportunity to serve this great city.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Longum. Yep. Move to my part of the agenda, community announcements. I have an unusual one here on Sunday from 3 to 5 p.m. at the community center. Person running for state senator, Rashida Tabel, will be there. You can come out and hear them. If you don't know it, we are going, Senator Hopgood, who's been our senator, will not be our senator when the next change in offices because of the change in the districts. So I don't know if this person is running for state senator in our new district. I think I understood that Virgil Smith, who is currently a state senator, will have Allen Park as part of his district, which extends back into Detroit. So there's that announcement. The Allen Park Chaplain Corps Thursday night, 7 to 8 at the Grace Church, is doing a program on stress management, and the speaker will be Mark Small, who is from the Guidance Center. So if you want to, the public's invited to that. And I went the last time, their first program, the cookies were great, the program was great, so I had a good time. This last item, the Zoning Board of Appeals, with the exception of this gentleman that I'm going to name in a moment, sent me an email and asked that this person be thanked for their services to the city of Allen Park. And unusual that you see a commission when they have somebody resigning, and he's resigning to move closer to his family and his wife's family in Owasso, Michigan. And the person's Aaron Mikey. And so I've written this thank you on behalf of citizens, the council, and myself. On behalf of the City of Allen Park, its residents and elected officials, we thank you for your service as chairman of the City's Zoning Board of Appeals for the year 2007 through 2009 and 2010 to the present. Your fellow members of the Zoning Board of Appeals felt it important that the city acknowledge the outstanding work you've done as chair of the board. The City Council and I agree and ask this recognition be publicly acknowledged. The Council and I recognize that your 10-year involvement since coming to Allen Park with your wife and 2 sons demonstrate how one person can have a positive impact on an entire community. In this relatively short time and as president of Baker College, you have educated many of our southeastern youth and young adults to obtain vocational education and assisted them in transitioning to the world of work. You and your colleagues participated in last year's Unity Walk, developed community programs to honor Martin Luther King, and participated in reading programs for the first and second graders at Rogers Elementary. You have allowed your maintenance department at Baker College to maintain the lawn service at Rotary Millward Park, enabling Allen Park schools to continue with soccer programs. You have also given your time and talents unselfishly to serve as board member and often president of many southeastern entities such as the Trillium Academy, Southern Wayne County Regional Chamber of Commerce, Allen Park Chamber of Commerce, and the Allen Park Rotary. For a person whose time with us will be too short, your impact on our community and institutions is remarkable. We understand how important family is to you and your wife, and this move will take you back home and near both sets of your parents. I want to express for all who know you how you will be missed. We wish you and your family the very best, and may you continue with your professional success. Sincerely, William B. Matekas, Mayor. With that, I will go to second-hand junk dealer's permit. Sublime to the ridiculous. Permit number 1.2.04. Could I have a motion on this?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Keenan, support by Mr. Sisko?
Templin.
Mr. Templin, excuse me. Is there any discussion? There is a report from the chief, I believe.
And through the chair, I did include the certificate of occupancy right after the fire department mentioning that, so
Okay.
I wanted to show they did obtain it.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. Thank you. Ms. Parker, we're going to move to your update on the community center, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I'd like to do is basically discuss where things are at to date after the last city council meeting when Mr. Ron Ranke provided a report based on his assessment at the community center. The other thing I'd like to state is the importance of not making comments that might create issues for the city in terms of any potential litigation. So certainly that should be a consideration, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Do I have any questions from council on the update?
Is that the report?
I'm tempted, but I'll say a few more words.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
You were going to skate now.
Okay. Since the last update by Mr. Ranke, there's several steps that have been taken by members of the city staff. One is in reference to developing a budget for the community center. And what we're attempting to do right now is put together a budget to get us through the remainder of this fiscal year up through June 30th. The budget will be based on anticipated revenue from the various groups and organizations that use the community center, and then based on the revenue, we'll develop a blueprint related to the expenses. The other thing that we're going to be doing, just as part of the overall budgeting process for the city for the upcoming fiscal year, is develop a 2-year budget, not only for recreation in the community center, but in other areas of the city's operation. The other thing that we've taken steps to do is to notify our groups that use the facility to let them know that we're still operating, we're open for business. We're going to be contacting the vendors, notifying them of the changes, so that process is underway. In terms of staffing, we've had an opportunity to meet with the staff that has been in place at the center, recognizing that, again, this is a transitional time frame. We've asked those that are employed there part-time that worked under TEC or TEAC to submit an application if they're interested in any form of employment with the city of Allen Park. And what we'll do as part of that process is a background check. We'll evaluate basically what our staffing needs are, what dollars are available, and employ those that we are able to do so with the resources that we currently have. Mr. Ranke, as part of his report, provided a number of recommendations on certain changes that are necessary at the center. One of the items brought to our attention in his report is a need to thoroughly clean the building, get it up to a certain standard. We've been able to obtain bids to get that underway, and the goal is to get that done in a timely manner. We've also made some changes in terms of security to make sure that the building is secure, that the assets included inside the building will remain intact until we're able to sit down with those that were involved with either TEC or TEAC to discuss any issues related to assets. We will be advertising for a director of leisure and community center in order to have a person full-time that will be able to oversee the operation related to the recreation component as well as the community center. And so right now our HR person is finalizing the job posting. Our goal is to get that posted by the end of the week. And then in terms of the Parks and Recreation Commission, Mrs. Folks will be meeting with the commission, I believe, tomorrow to provide an update with the commission, and we are planning to schedule additional meetings with the commission to talk about their role and how they might be able to assist as it relates to the oversight for the community center as well as for recreational programs. And so with that, Mr. Mayor, I certainly can try to answer any questions that either members of council might have or the public might have.
I'm going to take the council first, because after that we will be going to the citizens' questions and comments, and they can come forward at that time. Any questions by our council?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
And I don't want to do anything that would invite litigation, as you suggest, but I think one of the questions that I've heard, and you know because we've shared this through our electronic communications, Mrs. Folks, you and I think one of the most pressing questions is the huge utility bill. There seems to be some confusion, at least in my mind, I think in the minds of many, as to when the bill was transferred to the name of Tech, if it was transferred, because in the writings I've reviewed, and I know I heard Mrs. Folks tell us at the meeting recently that it was transferred, it's not our responsibility. Then I got other communications from you, I think, that said it was changed several months ago or months ago. I mean, they've had this place for 16 months, and then it's being changed back, but the electrical, maybe not the gas. I was very confusing. So I guess to kind of make us all clear, it seems a very easily ascertainable fact by presenting the DTE bill to somebody or other and say, or the bills that we may or may not have for the period of the 16 months to determine when it was transferred, if it was transferred, where it is now, how much it is. And then I guess underlying that big question, because that's a big dollar amount, that could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, 180,000, I've heard that number tossed around. But underlying that is, because we have a pattern here, I think, in our city, and I know we don't want to look backwards and all this kind of stuff, but if we don't learn from our mistakes, we can't correct them for the future. So the question I guess I have is, that is a city asset, that these voters that are sitting in front of us and their parents or their brothers and sisters voted for many years ago to build this building that I think we're still paying for. That's a city asset, and we had a duty, it seems to me, somewhere within our city hall administration or building department or recreation department to make sure that it didn't degrade, that we didn't encumber liabilities or whatever. And I don't know anything about Mr. Smith. I've met him. I don't know anything about what Dave's role was. He was the administrator at the time. Karen's the administrator now. Lots of people had an administrative sort of oversight function, I would at least assume. Maybe I assume wrongly, but somebody had to be in charge or overseeing this thing. And right now it's a fiasco, as we all know. And again, we don't want to nobody wants to dwell on the negative, but if we don't recognize how we got to this space, what's to say that the next time we make a big decision, we don't make similar mistakes? So I guess I'd ask you to address those things.
And, again, I don't think it serves the city to go back and forth on who's at fault, in our meeting. But on your question related to utility bills, it's not as simple as walking across the hall to the finance director's office to look at the bills. The issue, I believe, first of all, with the TEC contract, it's my understanding it was signed in January of 2013. So I believe the city's agreement was in place for 1 year, maybe a few weeks over 1 year.
I thought it was October
as opposed to
12th.
16 months. So it's about 1 year. The other thing with the utilities is that with DTE, it's my understanding that there has been a number of discussions with them by TEC to transfer the utilities, and based on the meetings that have taken place with DTE, they were very much aware that the utilities were supposed to be transferred, but evidently it's a process with them.
Transferred to us?
To TEC.
Oh, so and that suggests that they weren't transferred.
No, it's according to the meeting I had with DTE, the electrical was transferred, and they were actually in the process of transferring the gas. But they had had discussions over a number of months related to transferring the utilities. It's not a process where you might be able to call them evidently and say, hey, I want to have this service transferred into my name, like you would do for residential purposes. So the impression that they provided to me is that they were aware of it, they were working on it, and the process for the electrical had taken place, the process for the gas was underway.
Okay, let me just, because
Okay.
I'm kind of slow. So we signed a contract. I thought it was October, but if it was January, it's January. Sometime around January or afterwards, a movement was put in place to try to get the utilities taken out of the city's name and put in Tech's name.
Right.
And that either happened along the way or hasn't happened.
For the electrical.
For the electrical, it did happen.
It did happen.
And do we know when that happened?
I can't tell you the exact date, but what DTE shared with us is that everything within that time frame was transferred. So
Time frame since they transferred or since they started talking about transferring?
since they actually took on the responsibility for the center. So it was,
Okay,
it
so
was
backdated,
it was
retroactive. Okay.
Okay. And the same thing with the gas. It was our understanding it was going to be retroactive, and they were aware of the process. They were working on the process.
Okay.
And that wasn't something that I received from TEC. I received that information from Detroit Edison.
Yeah, and I can only relate to a residential situation. I don't own commercial buildings or
Yeah,
anything.
I'm not that familiar with it as well.
So if I understand you correctly, it sounds like this bill will be the liability of the
Well,
tech people.
That's my understanding. I believe in the agreement that was in place with TEC. They were responsible for the utilities once the contract was signed, and that occurred.
And you think that occurred January, not October?
Yeah, I believe it was January.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I heard the term,
Yeah.
I heard
I think-
October 23rd, we
Yeah,
were
I
here,
think
we
there
met
was-
on it.
There was some type of interaction with TEC prior to January,
Okay.
but there was not a contract.
All right. Now, if you don't mind, could you try to address this, and I'm not trying to find fault or cast blame on anybody, but I just want to know if there was any kind of role from our city hall during this period of time when we let one of our jewels of our city, our community building, into the hands of another. I would think there would be some kind of oversight outlined either in the contract, like the financials that they were supposed to submit and stuff. Did we ask for them monthly like we were contracted?
Well, basically, I believe there was a reference where the city certainly could request information. Financial reports were supposed to be provided to the city. The city did make requests for the reports. The information was not readily provided to the city. And as a result of the information not being provided, that prompted the review by Mr. Ranke.
And I guess my concern, as you know, was that we heard about these material breaches, if you want to call them that, for failing to comply with a term of the contract way back 4 or 5 months ago, as I recall now, maybe 6 months ago, when people stood up here and said, we're not getting information, the bill's running up and stuff like that. I'm just wondering what took us so long to get to that point.
Well, actually, with the comments received from, those from the public, from members of the council, from the staff, those comments actually prompted the review by Mr. Ranke. Meetings were held with the leadership at TEAC on a biweekly basis to try to acquire the information. And when it became apparent that everything was not readily available, comments were being provided about certain things taking place that did not take place, then it was suggested that we take a look at having the assessment done. Certainly, Mrs. Folks is not a specialist in the recreation area, nor am I, and so certainly it was to the city's advantage to perhaps seek out someone with that type of expertise.
And I think that was a great idea, and I'm glad you did that. My only objection would be that it seemed to be a little delayed in response.
Not really, because if you're thinking about the contract with them taking place about a year ago, and first of all, you have to allow the operation to move forward in order to have anything to assess. So once it was apparent that there was a need to have someone take a look at it in more detail, then the city did take those steps.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other questions? Councilman DiGiulio.
Is there also an outstanding water bill?
Mrs. Folks, do you know anything about an outstanding bill? I'm not aware of a water bill being outstanding. Yeah.
Mrs. Armstrong, do you know anything about an outstanding water bill?
No, only the DTE bills.
Okay, thank you.
Is the water bill in their name or ours?
I have no idea. I don't access the water.
I believe the water was transferred.
Isn't water always, though, goes against the building? Like if you have a rental house,
Well,
it goes against the rental house. It doesn't go against,
it stays with the property, but generally, if you have a new owner or someone that's responsible, you can transfer the water into their name. But for some reason, if you have a situation where a person doesn't pay their water bill, normally it stays with the property.
Can we check on that, do you think? You or Mrs. Armstrong?
We can do
If
that.
there's a,
Does the city attorney want to weigh in on that?
Well, I haven't seen that agreement, but whether or not it attaches as a lien to the property does not eliminate the liability, contractual liability that the water user may have. But again, I haven't reviewed the contract.
And the lien
But
would...
you are correct. In the contract, there's a provision where, any of the utilities are covered through the company.
I guess I'd just like to make the comment, it makes no difference that the lien attaches to the property. If they don't pay the bill, we're out the money. So that's the issue if it turns out that they aren't going to be held responsible for it. I don't think a lien attaching to us, we're not likely to exercise a lien against ourselves. So, we don't gain anything by that. But if there are no other questions, then I'm going to go to, oh, I'm sorry, Councilman Templin has a question, and then Councilman Cisco.
Go ahead. No, I don't have a question. Oh, he doesn't have a question.
Councilman Keenan, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Just a couple of things that maybe people don't understand, that if you start a business and you don't own the building, that water bill is, or the electric bill is on the person who operates that business, irregardless of who owns that building. Okay? So, you operate the business, the electric bill is yours, we own the building, the electric bill is not ours. So all this talk about we're going to owe $150,000, $160,000, of course, at this point, there is some, a little bit of confusion about that. But the way it works is, your business, your electric bill, you're responsible. That is the way it's always worked ever since I've been in business. So we need to understand that if there is something owed, that $150,000, $160,000 that everybody wants to jump up about is not our responsibility. And, we talked about some of the other things about the building. The fact is, we've kept that building open. It hasn't closed. It still stays open. And from what I'm understanding, the positive side of this that nobody has brought up yet, the positive side is that most of the ice time for next year is probably booked. So if you remember, when Tech took over, they're really, Allen Park Hockey Association had left, and we really were kind of left holding the bag at that point. They have, and you could say all the bad things you want about them, but they have reinvigorated the hockey program to the point where that ice time is few and far in between for anybody. So I'd just like to say that on a positive note. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Mayor Pro Tem Keenan, I'm sorry there, I got a order mix-up.
No problem. Ms. Parker, I guess just for the sake of clarification, and I'm not going to act like I don't know the answers because I asked them at the last meeting when Mr. Ranke was here.
Okay.
But I think some folks in the audience brought up the question of timing and what have you. And I specifically asked Mr. Ranke about when he was contacted and the process that he went through. And I believe, and I guess I'm going to ask you to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that he said that you had been made aware of several problems over a period of time, but in October was when it really came to light for you. You contacted him in late October. He started the initial process of trying to gather information to do his study in November. I think he shared that he was on vacation with his family in New York and was still going through some information and got some information while he was in New York and called you from his vacation to bring your attention to a couple of what he considered critical issues. So I guess maybe you may want to elaborate to go back that this is not something that just because the meeting took place 2 weeks ago that this happened like in the last month. I believe you started the process in October, if I'm correct.
That's correct. Not only were we involved in October when Mr. Ranke got involved with doing the actual assessment, prior to that, as I had mentioned earlier, once we started recognizing that there was some real issues there, meetings took place with TEAC biweekly to get a really good understanding from our perspective about what information was actually available and what was taking place at the center. And then once we were able to identify that perhaps the scope of the concerns might be beyond what I can do or Mrs. Folks can do or our staff could do, contact was made with the Michigan Parks and Recreation Department, and it was suggested that perhaps we have someone like Mr. Ranke. They provided more than one facilitator or consultant that could help us with that evaluation. And so that was the process that was taking place. But certainly, you're correct. It started more like mid-year of last year.
In the last follow-up that I had, I believe that, I think it was Mr. Haberkorn came up and asked if if Mr. Ranke's report could be provided to the Parks and Recreation Foundation and Committee. Has that happened, or if it hasn't, will it happen in the near
Yes,
future?
actually, I met with a member of the commission today, and that information will be made available to them at their meeting tomorrow.
Thank you.
One last question, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Well, let me just see if there's any other council person who hasn't spoken. Mr. Templin, Ms. Gawarecki? All right, Councilman Hayes.
The only concern I have, and I appreciate what Harry said, that I'm refreshed by your report. I'm more encouraged now than I was previously. But one of the things that struck me, and when the gentleman was here giving his testimony, was that he talked about this permafrost and how it could damage the rink and it could be ruined. And this is a very expensive proposition, as I understand it. And I understand there's some equipment situations over there that perhaps, I don't know how we could have done it. And again, you don't want to look backwards, but I'm trying to think if we ever run into a thing like this, we need to have some oversight. Because if somebody knows, I don't know a hockey rink from a pool table, but if this guy's an expert and he's telling us you should have cleared the ice off, you shouldn't leave it be frozen that long, if that's the case, I would like to think that maybe we have an expert within our building department, or maybe Mr. Smith, who worked in recreation for years, would know that and would have rang some bells and told us and said, hey, we got a potential hundreds of thousands of dollars of potential damage that may occur if we don't get on top of this. That's my concern.
And actually, he did include a reference in his report related to the ice being required to come out because of the damage it could have with the floor.
Right.
And Mr. Ranke is assisting us right now with getting certain things done at the center to make sure that we get that done. There's a number of other recommendations in terms of access to the building. We're working on that. But most of the recommendations in his report are currently underway for change.
Well, I'm glad to hear
And
that.
he is working with us on that.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
No other questions. We will come to the agenda item for citizens' questions and comments, and you're limited to 4 minutes, please.
And again, all citations tonight will be taken directly from evidence presented in U.S. District Court, Eastern District of Michigan, Southern Division, case number 10CV14368, Tracer versus City of Allen Park, Albright, Harvey, Dobberton, Cates, and Simoniak. First, I have communications between dispatch and officers who are being sent to my house. From the public record, and I quote, Dispatcher Dobberton to Albright, you can put the fear of God in this guy. Albright to Dobberton. K. Dobberton to Albright. Have you ever dealt with him? Albright to Dobberton. No. Dobberton to Harvey. Wayno is going to beat this guy up. I just have a feeling. Hand through the door and around his neck. Harvey to Dobberton. LOL. End quote. To restate, when Officer Harvey is notified by Dispatcher Dobberton that Officer Albright is going to violently deprive me of my constitutional rights, his response is, laugh out loud. Although arrested, beaten, handcuffed, made to do the perp walk in front of my entire neighborhood, and incarcerated in a filthy jail cell on a fabricated charge of assault on an officer, in 6 appearances in court, not once did the prosecutor even mention it. All appearances were to defend myself against a disturbing the peace ticket at a cost of almost $4,000 out of my pocket, to end up with Judge Page declaring, from notes in his own handwriting from the public record, and I quote, case dismissed with prejudice for failure to comply with discovery, end quote. Next, I have sworn testimony taken during my subsequent successful civil suit. My attorney, Thomas Pleasant, asked all questions. From the sworn statement, I quote, question, what response did your department command level have to this incident in relation to your discipline? Albright, they did an internal investigation based on the complaint. What kind of hearing did you have? Albright, I was interviewed. Were you counseled? Albright, I was, I guess you, counseled? I don't, no, I don't think I was counseled. Were you admonished? Albright, yes. Did you lose any days? Albright, yes. And was any sheet of paper placed in your permanent file because of this incident? Yes. Were you found responsible for any specific allegation? Albright, yes. I was disciplined for not leaving Mr. Tracer's house, end quote. Which brings me to the same two questions I have asked many times before without response. Number one, why was Prosecutor Cruz not charged with contempt for failing to comply with court-ordered discovery? And with full knowledge that departmental discipline was issued long before I agreed to accept the city's check, and that this civil case has no bearing on any criminal case, why were criminal charges not brought immediately against Albright, Harvey, Dobberton, Cates, and Simoniak upon the department's knowledge they had committed crimes against me?
Mr. Mayor, point of order here. Yes. Whistling at you, you are not a dog.
I'm trying to see if he's all right.
I want him ruled out of order for whistling at you like a dog. That is inappropriate.
Trying to catch his attention. Easy, Harry.
Not right.
Easy, Harry.
Not right.
Get a grip.
Not right.
Mr. Tracer.
Time's up.
It is.
I'll be back.
Ray McGuston, citizen of Allen Park, Quant. Mr. Mayor, through the chair, please, I'd like to address Ms. Armstrong, and maybe she can help on this issue. If our assessments have gone up, and they look like they're gone up quite a bit, but only able to go up 1%, do you have any idea how much more money this is going to bring into the city?
No, because I don't know what the millage rates are going to be.
Thank you.
I think assuming all millage rates stay constant, the total increase, county, school district, city, I think we're assessing about $770 million of property in the city. So 1% increase in that would be $77,000 to all taxable entities. It will not be a substantial amount because the city will only collect 16 out of about 70 mills. So what is that? They would get about, let's say, a little less than 25% of 77. It's not going to substantially change the amount of money we take in.
Just a point, just a point, just a question, okay, when it comes to something like that, when we go ahead and look into hiring somebody for the for the community center, is that going to be open to the public under the Open Meetings Act? Are you Mr. Mayor and the city council going to approve that individual to go ahead and run our piece of property, since Ms. Parker, and nothing against Ms. Parker, that might be gone by September, and someone else might be here and not be here?
Ms. Parker historically has reviewed appointments that she wishes to make in the city with city council, and is not at an open meeting, but she does
I would
have people.
I would highly recommend you and look at, and have our city attorney look into the Open Meetings Act for the state of Michigan when it comes to hiring people to run our city, including our city administrator, even though we do have emergency manager. Just a point. Highly open the reading of the Open Meetings Act of the state of Michigan, and you'll see what it says. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Ms. Parker. First, thank yous. Thank you, Ms. Parker, for getting the video system up and running. Kept the promise. Also, to the DPS guys, it's Crater City out there and you're doing a good job. Also, what about the Hill? I've asked about that for a couple years, and you know, the Hill parent paying their share. Are there more than discussions going on? Are there negotiations?
Yes. I know you've asked the question several times, and we are still working on that. Sometimes it takes a while to get something like that done in terms of some agreement or closure, but we are still working on it. And as soon as I have something concrete to share with you and the public and the council, I'll make sure that that information is conveyed to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Also, through the chair to Ms. Parker, you said that we had some people interested next door. Anything more or better to let us know?
Well, you know, we're pretty optimistic, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to get something in place in the very near future. I believe at the town hall meeting, we did have CBRE there to talk about the status, and we've received 3, I believe, concrete proposals related to the property next door. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get something finalized in the very near future.
Will, through the chair to Ms. Parker, will that include them making a contribution for rebuilding City Hall?
Well, I'm not able to really get into that response at this point in time, but it is on our agenda for this year to look at relocating or making changes related to City Hall.
Because I know some people don't know, but this City Hall is in that 104 acres.
No, it's
No?
separate.
Is it separate?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a separate 11.
Separate 11, but is it for sale?
Everything's for sale if you give us enough money.
It's a total of 115 acres with City Hall.
That's-
104 is next door.
Right, that's what I was trying to say, is 115 acres total. I guess to the mayor, did anybody change the locks on the community center?
Yes.
Somebody had the foresight. Congratulations. I'm not meaning that as a joke either. I'm glad they changed the locks, so we don't have anything walk off. Thank you.
Walt Jordanek, Bel Air Avenue, citizen of Allen Park. Since we've changed the locks on the community center, who's running the community center since we are still open for business? Is it Temple or the city, or who is it?
Yeah, the city of Allen Park is operating the community center.
And we have employees there operating it, city employees?
As part of the transition, we have offered to those that were working at the center prior to the city's involvement to apply for positions with the city. And based on their applications, we're going to review those and make some decision on whether we retain them as city employees or do something different.
Okay. In regards to the Southfield lease property, at the town hall meeting, you had talked, and CBRE had talked about people with a lot of interest. You also mentioned the land contract deal. Who is going to administer that land contract if indeed we do go with a land contract with a purchaser in the city?
If we take that approach, that's something that will be discussed. It's certainly something that can be handled either internally, for example, like in our finance department, or we could have a third-party administrator. We haven't made that decision yet.
Okay. Because of the community center, since there didn't seem to be anybody overseeing what Temple was doing, I'd hate to see us get in the real estate business and not oversee a land contract on that property.
I think your point is well taken as far as making sure that we have
Okay.
someone accountable. I agree.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Brian Debo at Allen Park, Pleasant Street. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about the overtime situation. All of you were copied on the correspondence that Ms. Parker and I were sharing. The last email she sent me, there was an attachment. Hopefully all of you read it. If you haven't, I'd like to share some numbers with you. Last year, we spent $666,000 on city overtime. The first 6 months of this year, we spent $302,000. That's a total of $968,000. That's almost $1 million in a year and a half we have spent on overtime. Let me break it down further for you. Last year, we averaged approximately $55,500 per month. The first 3 months of this year, we averaged $47,000 a month. The last 3 months, the second quarter, we averaged $54,000 per month. So between the contracts, decrees, whatever you call them, were signed last July, or were in effect last July. First quarter, we spent $139,000. The second quarter, $162,000. The numbers are getting worse. They're not getting any better. We were told many times that the trend's better. The trend's not better. The trend's getting worse. Now, some of the excuses that we've heard was we don't have enough people. Where is the auxiliary, where's the plans for the professionally trained auxiliary police? Where's the plans for the volunteers? There are none. All we hear is we'll look into it, and we hear a litany of excuses of why it can happen. We don't hear reasons why it can happen. We just hear excuses of why it can't happen. Cities throughout Michigan have implemented this program successfully. Why can't we learn from those people? Also, it's been implied to me that, wait a second, some of the police overtime is offset by grants and by the ticket revenue. With that, if you're trying to say that if we did not have any overtime, hypothetically, we wouldn't have any ticket revenue or we wouldn't have any grants, I contend that money could be spent any other places within a police budget. They don't have to be applied towards overtime. The only reason why they're being applied towards overtime is so you can delude yourself thinking that the numbers are pretty good. They're not. And I believe just because the EM is running the city's financials, it doesn't absolve you guys from taking a look at numbers, taking a look at what's happening at the rec center. It doesn't mean you guys can't get involved with coming up with ideas or implementing plans or suggestions or something along those lines. It seems like that $1.5 million spent in a year and a half, many of you don't even think that's a problem. You think the problem is me coming up here bringing it up. You think any negative information should be put to the side and hopefully it's going to fix itself. It's not. It's going to continue. You have to get involved. You have to be more aware of what's going on. There's only been one person up here that has any attention towards the overtime situation. The rest of you just sitting there. You've seen the correspondence that went back and forth. Not one person, only one person even responded to me. Please, you have to do a better job. And with the respect to what's happening at the rec center, it's quite obvious that nobody was looking at what was going on there for a year. If you've just been made aware of it last October, it was a year that these people, you gave a contract to people and you let them loose. My gosh, you can't do that. You can't do it in the private sector. You certainly can't do it in the government sector. And I implore you, before anything gets signed for the property next door, just like the last gentleman said, please get some outside people. You were not elected here because you're real estate experts. Get help. Nothing wrong with that. Thank you.
Jennifer Kibbe, Director of the Allen Park Downtown Development Authority. On your table, I put an invitation to a ribbon cutting this Thursday at 6 o'clock to the Shawarma King. I can think of no better thing in the city as a new business opening, and I strongly encourage each of you to attend and show a proper welcome to somebody who's put their faith in the city in a time when many of us don't have that faith. And we'll make sure that they have a proper welcome and have a successful time in Allen Park. So please join us 6 o'clock at the Shawarma King on Southfield next to Ramshorn. Thank you.
Bruce Aberkern, Champaign Street, Allen Park, and part of the Parks and Rec Foundation. And I want to go through the chair to clarify a couple of things from Ms. Parker. First of all, the Parks and Rec Foundation, Parks and Rec Commission is meeting tomorrow night at 7:30. And then on Thursday night at 7:30 is the Parks and Rec Foundation Commission. So when Mr. Keenan asked about, Parks and Rec Foundation, I want to make sure, and hopefully Mrs. Folks is going to be at both meetings, is what I was told.
Just the commission.
Hey, we're more important. We're the ones with the money. We'll talk.
You make a good point. We'll talk.
Yeah, and I think that's on the agenda today, the listing of commissions, because I know Mike has posted it. So I want to clarify that. And part of the reason the foundation was going to meet was, there are no working drinking fountains in any of the parks in Allen Park. This was as of last fall. We're not talking about, obviously, February. There's no working drinking fountains anywhere. And in fact, when Ms. Parker and I went on the tour of the parks, she doesn't know my sense of humor, but I pointed out these are monuments because they don't work, so they're just sticking up there and that. And other thing I do want to clarify what was said last week. There are 4 parks that are involved in the 160,000. That the one that was omitted was Pretty Family Park. Okay. So we didn't want confusion out in the community on that. We are, this has been talked about the foundation getting a lot more involved, especially in the, concerned about the finances of running the recreation department, especially when that was one of the first things being cut and whatever. I've been involved for over 20 years on First Commission, and then when we ran into financial problems, I went out and saw how other communities did it and came back with the idea, and we started the foundation. And one of the things I can say is that our mayor and council, every one of you, have over the years supported the foundation. Several of you came to the fundraiser a couple years ago with a variety show, and a couple of you have played or supported the golf tournaments in the past years. But one of the things is we're going to have to step things up. I could only find one of the brochures. We're going to have to get these printed out and get these more out in the community and promote that in the future. Other thing that we used to do was have brochures promoting the auditorium and the ice skating rink before we built the community center. Budget-wise, we're going to, we already know, everybody knows about the electric bill, But for the next 14 months or however, we're going to probably have that much money in the budget for the electric bill. And then you have staff. The more you have to put people in the community center, and in order to do that, you're going to have staff members, which costs money. And we're not like the private sector, that all the money, revenue comes in and goes into the, back to the rec department. And that's why, people need the foundation. Now, I think it was probably about 40 years ago when I first met Harry, and out on the softball fields. And at that point, we had 52 men's softball teams. I think Harry sponsored at least 2 or 3 men's, and there were 12 women's, and you may have even sponsored a women's team at that point. And that. Now, the last time the city ran a softball program, we had 18 teams. Because again, there's no incentive to promote softball in town. So anyway, I want to invite everybody here to come next 2 nights and learn firsthand on it. And I guess I will have to make a special appointment with you to go over some of the stuff.
Good evening, Russell Pillar, Arlington Avenue in Allen Park. Through the chair, I'd like to commend Councilman Hayes for his closing remarks last council meeting in regards to questions that gets asked through the years that just get thrown off or never answered or whatever. I'd like to sincerely commend you on your speech. I attended the town meeting last week, and Ms. Parker said that she was probably going to be phased out here within this year, and that the budget was more than likely going to be balanced when she left. And she said that the deficit as of last week was 600,000 plus, but there was a politician that ran for office, I believe it was president a few years back, and he talked about fuzzy math. There is $6 to $7 million owed to the pension system. How can you balance a budget of 600 and something thousand when you got a $6 or $7 million deficit outstanding? Somewhere down the line, that money has to be paid. Another gentleman brought up one of the other question I had in regards to the Hill. I myself have been up here for approximately 2 years asking why they aren't paying their way when they have the majority of our police and fire activity up there. Also, who plows that road and salts that road that leads up to Myers and that? If that's the city, why aren't they billed for our salt that we pay for as taxpayers? I've got to look at my list here. I asked about a month ago in regards to a court case that had been dismissed recently in circuit court, and what was the attorney bill for that, and you said that you only get the bill from the attorney. It's not itemized. Well, I would like an itemized bill. If I have to FOIA it or get a subpoena for it or whatever, I intend to get it. And since that case was dismissed in circuit court, it's been another month has gone by, and still that city portion of the case is still pending. And are we going to resolve this one way or another, or are we just going to continue stalemated?
The mayor and council have directed council to do certain things if you're talking about the case that involves Councilman DiGiulio in the city of Allen Park.
That's correct.
So that's where we are, and that is a confidential situation between the city council, mayor, and its attorneys.
Okay. I'll go back now to the Hill. Do you know who salts that street?
I do not, but they pay taxes, remember.
Into the brownfield.
Well, that's the taxes. I mean,
Yeah.
that mayor and council prior set that up.
Yeah, you're not responsible for that, but also, I don't know if anybody's been over to the Hill lately, too. The approach that's going up there is like a bomb field, and either the city or the development company up there should repair it. Thank you.
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, from what I was told, it is the developer. Because we've had a couple questions on some of the potholes going up there just recently, and I was informed that's on the developer. Same with the snow removal. We don't have the kind of equipment to clear out their parking lots and their.
I just meant the
yeah.
roadway.
Yeah, just right at the, if I'm not mistaken, Outer Drive.
Okay, thank you.
But, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Ms.
If I
Parker.
could just comment on a couple of items related to Mr. Pillar's question. Yeah. You had raised a question related to the deficit for the city based on the city's audit report.
Yes.
That was completed for the last fiscal year. The deficit was around $600,000. On the issue of the pension portion that was not paid, the amount was $2.6 million, and the city is in the process of making arrangements with the pension board to make that payment. So I wanted to be clear on what the status is.
All right, thank you very much. I
You're
appreciate that.
Hi, Marcy DiGiulio Galca, Allen Road. My first question is, did we get a new video system?
I don't believe it's a new video system at this point, is it? We just have,
No, it's just,
The
I
system?
believe for the meeting tonight, it's a temporary correction, but we will be getting parts replaced in our system in order to have it operate.
Are we paying Mr. Herndon to videotape tonight?
I don't believe so.
he's not videotaping, he's writing his article about this meeting.
Oh, okay, behind the council chambers, okay,
He
all
used to-
right,
And they used to sit there before.
okay. In regards, I wanted to tell you, Melvindale had the same thing happen to their community center, where they had to take it back from a company. And DTE did make them pay the electric bill, just so you know. Have we hired anyone from tech to now work at the community center?
We have not hired anyone from tech to work at the community center.
Are we paying anyone from tech right now?
No, we are not. However, certainly part of what we will be doing is assessing the resources that we need in order to operate the center.
Okay. And I am not trying to be negative to anyone or anything, but again, when we had this contract, they were supposed to, and when we gave this to tech, this was given to tech by the council in a rushed manner, because everyone thought that you were going to come in and shut our community center down. We hired Mr. Carson Smith. We pay him $30 an hour for 30 hours a week. We have that in place as far as management for the city. Then we had a city administrator, and no one bothered to check to make sure that this was running correctly. And this is what I have a problem with. Someone is got to be responsible, because ultimately it's you guys who are responsible for the monies that are spent. And ultimately, it's going to be the citizens who have to pay for it. So, and I have an issue, I would ask that when you hire people, you take applications. I don't think it was right if Mr. Smith was there, being at Parks and I have nothing against Mr. Smith. I like him, but being the Parks and Rec director and then having tech hire his child, you're not going to supervise someone who gives your child money. It's just not going to happen. So I would ask that when we're taking applications, we don't only take applications from who work there, but we open it up and we hire the most qualified person for the job. We need a little less friends and family plan and a little more honesty and openness in our government. And it's not being negative, it's just what we need. Thank you.
Councilman Keenan?
Just a point of clarification, and I think you said it earlier, but you came to the city of Allen Park in I think either late October or early November of 12, and I believe you said the contract with Tech was signed in January. So I don't believe that this council entered into any contract at the point. It's kind of a technicality, but I just want to be clear. This council certainly entered into the negotiations and was part of it, but you can't have it both ways. It's not.
Well, and actually, I would need to go back and check, but I believe the city, other than me, signed that contract, but I could check into it.
Right. I mean, I think that we did vote
Yeah.
to accept them, but ultimately, when you came in, you reviewed the contract and you signed it.
No, I didn't.
You did not review the contract?
No.
So
It was already in place as far as the operation and the decision. And so even though the contract was not signed until January, it's my understanding that there had been some arrangement informally to work with them.
who signed the contract?
Probably the mayor and the clerk, whoever normally sign your contracts.
Okay. I didn't think we had authority.
But, you know, again, I think the real question at this point is, you know, how do we move forward with getting the community center back on track?
I guess I wasn't aware that the mayor had the ability to sign contracts after you were in place. I thought that was taken away, but that's all right. I'm good with it.
Okay, we'll go back to citizens' comments, please.
Dr. Robert Armstead, Willow Cove. I just wanted to make a point in regards to the rules of decorum where citizens have to come up and give their name and address. I would think that maybe city council would give their addresses to. Just one point. In regards to the water bill, I'm surprised that no one knows about it in the city here because I did a FOIA, and that's how I found about it. It was approximately $16,000, and Temple's name was on the water bill, owing it to the city, and that was dated 12/1 of last year. You know, what's surprising is, oh, by the way, October 23rd, 2012, the contract was signed by the mayor and Mr. Missy. I have a copy of the contract if anyone needs it. April 23rd of 2013, there was a profit and loss statement by Temple Entertainment Corporation. And they stated to the city council it was a $166,000 loss. Why wouldn't that have prompted anyone to go back and say, we need to have some financial oversight here? That would be an automatic. Now, I've sent information to the emergency manager back in December of 2012, alerting to the problems. There was no financial assurance that I can find documents in the city through FOIA, yet that's in the contract. This isn't to be negative. This is just to bring up these points that we keep on going through this. We went through the Unity studios. I consider this a little mini Unity studio. There's much, much more that I can't get into right now, but it's under investigation. I think through the chair, Ms. Parker, I believe you stated that there was weekly meetings with Temple Entertainment Arena Corporation. Mr. Ranke, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, his report stated that that corporation wasn't valid. They never signed a contract with the city, Temple Entertainment Arena Corporation. Matter of fact, on October 23rd of 2012, when the contract was signed with Temple Entertainment Corporation, approximately 2 weeks later, Temple Entertainment Arena Corporation was formed. Why? That doesn't make sense. There's a lot of things here going on. As far as the DTE bill.
Dr. Armstead?
Yes.
I had indicated that I met biweekly with those that were there at the community center.
You had mentioned Temple Entertainment Arena Corporation. You specifically stated that earlier.
Right, yep. With
And
Temple
there was
Entertainment.
Arena
Arena
Corporation.
Corporation.
And they weren't even valid. I don't even know why you were talking with them.
Based on the material they provided to us, they were basically structured.
I don't understand what you mean, basically structured. They didn't have a contract with the city.
They didn't have a contract with the city, but they actually was incorporated as not a nonprofit, but a for-profit organization.
And I don't get the point. They had no contract with the city. They had no business, representing anything. Matter of fact, I would like to really see that we go after
I
them
only stated that I did meet with them biweekly.
with Temple Entertainment Arena Corporation. I understand that. They also made reference, Temple Entertainment Corporation, on October 22nd of last year, that they had maintenance and repair costs of approximately $200,000. Where's the receipts? That's what I meant earlier when I said there's revenues of over $800,000 that I have documents from the city showing that, but there's paper maintenance and repairs. And what I mean by that is there's no documentation. Thank you.
Hi, Steve Atanosowski from Hanover Allen Park. I'm curious if the News Herald is lying about the story about the house on Oceana, and if there's anything you can tell us about this. It seems like it was a felony with these 12 plants that are easily worth $20,000. That's big business of someone growing in their basement and running an illegal dope house, it seems like.
There's an investigation, and that's all I can tell you. We really can't.
Wouldn't the police know if he had his card ahead of time? There shouldn't be we should at least know if he had his card or not. That's something that the police do know. You would have it posted all over your walls, 12 plants at 4 foot and bigger, that's gonna harvest more than 2.5 ounces. That's all illegal.
Good evening. My name is Gene Reedon. I represent Troop 1061, Boy Scout Troop of Allen Park. Come up here quite a few times in the last probably 10 years to thank the city, the council members, the Parks and Rec Department. Sometimes I kind of feel a little funny because I'm always the last one up here, and I guess I'm the only one that can really throw some good news towards our city. Without your help, although we weren't able to put it on this year because of the weather, obviously the snow, but every year you guys have been very, very generous to the scouting organization to help us use your facilities to put on an event for the Cub Scouts. That's always the little guys. We didn't do it this year only because of the severe weather and the severe snow. But again, without the Parks and Rec help, at least it was there. At least we tried. We went out right up to the very last day. We had to cancel it because of that. But I think it's nice once in a while to say, good job to all you guys and our facilities in the city that at least there's a good thing once in a while to be said. So kudos. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we've got all the citizens and other people here tonight, so I'm going to go to council members, and tonight I'm starting with Councilman Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate it. And I'd like to, first of all, extend a happy birthday to one of our regular customers who I don't see here tonight. Walter Jastro comes to almost every meeting, sits over here, and I understand it's his birthday today, and we want to wish him the best on his whatever number birthday it is for him. Secondly, I think I appreciate Mr. Pillar's remarks, although I'm really embarrassed by them because, frankly, I think my comments, while I think the substance of them were accurate, I think the tone of them was not good. And I know I'd like to say it was out of character for me, but it's not out of character. That is kind of how my pattern has been, truth be known, and any careful observer would recognize that. But I think Mrs. Folks and I had an opportunity to have a kind of a meeting of the minds. I don't think it's perfected as yet, but I think we at least made a headway. I think she understands my frustrations that would lead me to become less friendly in my approach stems from the very fact that I like answers to questions. Such was my subject matter that Mr. Pillar refers to. And I think we've realized that the best way for us to communicate is to communicate. I like things in writing. I think a lot gets lost in verbal statements. Meetings in offices I don't think are effective to really preserve a record of factual responses. So I think Mrs. Folks and I understand that if I ask her a question, I think she knows that I will expect a written answer. And Mrs. Parker, I think, understands that. We've succeeded in being able to achieve that, I think, thus far. And so I want to publicly and profusely apologize to Karen Folks, our administrator, for any upset I may have caused her. As I say, I'd like to say it was out of character, but it probably wasn't. But I'm man enough to admit when I make a mistake, and hopefully we can all move forward, as we all loathe to say, moving forward, moving forward. I will not stop pointing out things that I think may be wrong. I'd like to have it not classified as negative, but rather an approach to how do we avoid repeating problems. If we don't learn from history, we're bound to repeat it. You can pick whoever said it. I don't have that at my fingertips tonight. So I'm just suggesting that we need to work hard to answer each other. Don't hide things. Don't delay things. Answer the questions when asked. If you don't know, I don't know is an acceptable answer. But to delay or not respond is unacceptable. That's my point of view, and Karen, I hope you accept my apology. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Keenan.
I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I do want to recognize, as the mayor did earlier, Aaron Mikey. I think a lot of you probably know he has been very helpful to us as a community as the president of Baker College. He's been involved in a number of different capacities in the city, as the mayor stated at the end here on the zoning board, I think, of appeals or what have you. But that organization has been very, very helpful. I'm not sure who the new person is. I got a name, but I've never met her.
Former finance director.
Yeah, I've never met her, but hopefully we'll continue that relationship with Baker College moving forward. I guess I just want to say that I would ask you folks in the audience not to mistake the fact that some of us don't reply to all in responses, because some of us have been schooled that we're not supposed to do that. It's a violation of the Open Meetings Act in some instances, as us not being involved in the city. Just because we may have somebody or people up here that want to voice things out in public, you know, in my sense would be more of to embarrass people, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the people up here aren't communicating behind the scenes their frustrations or even their suggestions. Or I know for myself, for instance, today I know Mike, Harry, and I both got an email from a business owner. I responded to that email immediately. I did not carbon copy Harry and Mike. I didn't think that I needed to. I know Mike responded and he carbon copied Harry and I. That's certainly his choice. But I would just challenge you not to just think because you send an email. If you send an email directly to me, you will get a response from me. If you carbon copy me on an email to Joyce Parker, I don't feel obligated to answer that. If I do want to give input to Ms. Parker, and maybe I may agree with you, I don't carbon copy you. So, but that does not mean that I'm sitting up here like a bump on a log, not involved in anything, and I would challenge you to think that that's the case with most of us. There's only a couple of us that will reply to all in emails. So that's it. With that, have a good night. Thanks for coming out.
Councilman Cisco.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just expand on what Mr. Keenan said, is that for anybody to come up here and say that we haven't done anything or we just sit here and come to the meetings 2 times a month is a statement that's not well-founded. There are many of us that go talk to Ms. Parker on a regular basis, not weekly, if not phone calls, Ms. Folks, department heads. I don't know about anybody else, but I also do not reply to all. And let me tell you something else. A lot of the emails we get, and you know how you can carbon copy people, there are carbon copies, emails sent to us that go to the governor, the review board, all the news outlets in the entire state, the Mackinac Center, you name it, WXYZ, Channel 2, Channel 4, Channel 50, they're all carbon copied when they send us an email. And I will not respond to those emails for that reason. You want to send me an email? Send me an email. You know my phone number? There's plenty of people in this audience that know my phone number. All you have to do is call and talk to me. I'm always available. So for somebody to say that we haven't done anything or we're not doing anything is really unfounded, really unfair. And I'd like to address the Hill thing that Mr. Wojcicki had brought up. You know, back when we first started, one of the first things that I talked to Ms. Parker about was making a special assessment on the Hill, which I think we're allowed to do. We don't need their permission to get money from them. Now, there is a trick to it because there's a law that was done in about 1940, state of Michigan law, that's an infrastructure law, that's the only thing you could do a special assessment for. But that was done in 1940. Here we are in 2014, and when I made that suggestion, when we first got elected was 2011, that law should include police and fire as part of infrastructure. Things have changed, and there is case law that supports that. And when our former city attorney, Chris Forsythe, was here, I had many discussions with him, many emails with him about that. And I think I kind of turned him into the positive that, yeah, we can do that. I believe there's at least $500 to $1 million sitting up on the Hill in revenue that we should have every year. And we do not need their permission to ask them. It's our right as a city. So with that nice applause, I'll just end it and say thank you.
Councilman Templin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to thank everybody coming tonight. Thanks for all your comments. I know a lot of stuff happens behind the scene that you don't know about. Enough said of that. I don't get a lot of emails either, so I feel a little left out. Have a good night.
Councilman DiGiulio.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome to the new group of students from Allen Park High School. 54 years ago, I was in the same spot as you are at Allen Park High. And it only seems like 53 years, but it was 54 when I think about it. Okay, Mr. Mayor, I'm really glad that you had that reading of the rules of decorum. Perhaps a lot of things that happened over the last 2 years could have been eliminated if we did that at every meeting. So I'm really glad to see that's something that we're going to start doing. We are learning, that's for sure. And Ms. Kibbe mentioned the new Shawarma King, but also we have a new pharmacy that opened on Champaign and Rosedale called the, what's it actually called? Oh, the Champaign Family Pharmacy. So it's like a little corner pharmacy that just opened, I think, in the past week or 10 days. Anyway, as always, I use businesses in the city for everything I do if it's possible, and I hope we all think about doing that too throughout the years. Thank you and good night.
Councilwoman Gavaricki.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming out tonight and for your comments. I too do try to reply to your email either by forwarding it off to an administrator to answer or try to look into the issue for you. So if I missed your email, Brian, I apologize. So I will try to be more responsive. Thank you for those that gave presentations tonight. I think the TSA, there was a dollar amount, and I think correct me if I'm wrong, but that $2,350 will be coming out of our CDBG account for payment, just so nobody thinks that it's coming out of our general fund. And Ms. Parker, thank you for giving an update on the community center. Good night, and have a good evening.
Treasurer Armstrong.
Thank you, everyone, for coming, and have a good evening.
Clerk Mizzy.
I'd like to recognize Gene Reardon. He came up here earlier to say thank you. I don't know if he's still here. But every year, what he's talking about is at Champaign Park, all the Cub Scouts in the whole district in the southeast part of Michigan come to Champaign Park to have some events. And it really is a fun time. My son's a scout. I know a couple other people, they have grandsons and granddaughters who are scouts, but it's only for Cub Scout. But it's a great program, and if I'm not mistaken, I just again want to say on behalf of the city, thank you to Gene, because I believe it was a member of his troop that re-roofed one of the shelters at our parks for an Eagle Scout project. So you don't always hear about stuff like that, but we do have a lot of active scouts in Allen Park, and if any of you see Gene, tell him thank you, because he's supervised programs like the food pickup, when we drop off the bags and pick up, he's organized a lot of that in this community. So really, as all of us, we benefit more from him probably than a lot of things we do up here. So I'd like to recognize him. And with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming out tonight. God bless you and good night.
City Administrator Folks, would you like to address us tonight?
Just a couple of things. I'm just going to reiterate what you've already heard tonight, and that is there really is quite a bit of meaningful conversation that does occur behind the scenes that you're probably not aware of. And so I wanted to make mention of that. And the only other thing is that we have a visioning event which occurs this coming Saturday. We invite you to register, to participate. We want your input. We want to hear your voice. So I encourage you, if you have any questions about this, ask me. We'd love to see you there. And there is Allen Park High School in the cafeteria from 8:30 to 2 o'clock. Thanks.
Ms. Parker?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize and thank our Public Works employees as well as our police officers and firefighters as it relates to maintaining the city during the winter months. I know we still have a way to go before we're into spring, but we've had a number of snowfalls here in the city, the ice, and as a result, our employees have worked very hard to maintain the streets and make things safe for the community. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to thank them for the work that they do for the city.
Thank you. Just, we received from Mark Kibbe, our block grant program coordinator, tonight that free smoke detectors are now available at the fire department or the clerk's office, so for seniors. So I'm not certain of the seniors 60 years old these days or whether it goes down lower, but call either the fire department or the clerk's office and get that straightened out, and if you need fire detectors, see them. I'd like to go to my closing comments on a number of things. First, Carson Smith never had a job description that included a review of the contracts with Temple Entertainment. he was brought in because we still had the parks, we had all of the programs that take place in the summertime, and he books really in the late winter, early spring, a lot of the baseball programs and those things, and that's what he was there for. I don't think we ever got to that point where we said, put him there. Admittedly, the attempts to see what was going on at the community center financially was peripatetic at best on behalf of the city hall, but we did start pretty early in there. As you remember, they were here in April, and the matters have escalated, and as have you heard before, things started in July picking up. I don't know if things can go much faster. And the last thing, as I said, I will defend the citizens, the employees of this city when it's deserved. A citizen came up tonight and he reads from the record, but the record should show that in 2009, when the event occurred, it was reviewed, officers were disciplined, and no one deemed that criminal actions should take place. And then the settlement between...
Point of order, sir. This is the mayor's comments. You have no say in this.
8B, Rule 8B says when you speak about me, I have a right to immediate rebuttal.
You will stop speaking right now. It's my turn, and I'll explain Rule 8B to you at the end of my comments. Now, you just be patient. Mr. Tracer entered into a settlement agreement with the city. Paragraph 2 of that agreement says, no admission of liability. It is understood and agreed that this settlement is the compromise of a doubtful and disputed claim, and that the payment made is not to be construed as an admission of liability on part of defendant, hereby released, and that said agreement denies liability, therefore, and intends merely to avoid further litigation. It is further understood and agreed that the parties hereby released make no admission whatsoever of having violated the rights of plaintiff, deny all allegations of same, but enter into this settlement agreement, indemnity agreement, for derivative claims and release of all claims solely in order to bring about an end to all litigation claims and other charges against defendant by plaintiff. Now, Mr. Tracer wants to cite 8B, but he's the one that spoke first on this issue. I'm the one replying on behalf of the city because that's who he's challenging at this point. I'm the responsible party to the city to respond. So I have the 8B right, but I don't respond during the citizen's comment. I took my time to respond. I have the 8B right, not Mr. Tracer. And you should all understand that. And if Mr. Tracer speaks again, he will find that I am going to have him ejected from this place and/or arrested for disruption of this meeting. With that, we're done, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hayes, supported by Mr. DiGiulio. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Watch it, Matakis, because the next shoot, you will lose your mayorship. You lied in your reports to the police with Chris.
How do I turn these off?
That's a crime.
Just hit it off like
You're a
that.
liar.